Hi there, this is Andrew Brody with Yokogawa, and today I'd like to give you a brief presentation of the Stardom RTU and controller connecting to the new Yokogawa EJX Multivariable transmitter via Modbus. So this will be a brief tutorial on how to get Stardom up and running and communicating with the EJX via Modbus. So over on the left hand side here we see the new EJX transmitter. We can see a little note here that we've gone ahead and added Modbus RTU support. I'm going to give a quick tutorial here of how to bring in the primary three variables off it: static pressure, differential pressure, and temperature off the unit into a Stardom controller, and from there you can do whatever you want with the variables. So here we are. If you kind of take a look down here on the web page, there's going to be the user manuals. Over on the user manual side, you're going to see that we have the Modbus communications right here. If you go ahead and download that, you'll get to see everything on the EJX. And then if you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll actually get to see the stuff that's going to be of importance to you. The main thing is probably going to be this address map down here, where it's going to kind of tell you every single address that you're going to look to pull from the recorder, as well as its data type, whether it's read or writable. And I've actually got a project set up here that I'm going to show you that has the three main variables as well as the register type. So over here on the right, we've actually got the Stardom controller. It comes in the FCN, the FCN RTU, and the FCJ. The interface on the EJX is an RS485 Modbus interface. So with the FCN, we have native RS485 cards that you can put into it, or even our CPU has a RS232 connector on it. So you just need to do an RS232 to RS485 converter in order to use that for kind of like a multi-drop connection. The FCN RTU, in this case, the top connector right here on the RTU itself is a RS422 485 connector. There's three more RS232s, and then of course below there's a Ethernet connector on the bottom. So I'm going to be using the top connector, which is considered COM port 4 on the FCN RTU, to go ahead and talk to the EJX. You could also do it with the FCJ. It's got a pair of serial ports on it. But once again, you need a RS232 to 485 adapter on it to be able to do something multi-drop like the EJX. Now there's a few things you're going to need to make sure you've got on your Stardom unit. So if you kind of go to Resource Configurator here and you go ahead and connect up to your Stardom unit, you're going to have to make sure under licensing that you've got the Modbus Communication Portfolio license installed. For the RTU, you have to order up a CPU that has this, so models like the S10, S11, the SA0, the SA1, and some of the other models have it for the RTU. With the RTU model, it's either on the CPU or it's not. It can't be ordered after the fact, so make sure when you order up your CPU that it has the Modbus license on it if you're going to do it. It basically comes in two models. One that has just the bare basic controls on it. The other has essentially all the licenses like you're seeing here. So make sure you get the one with all the licenses as well as the Modbus. For the FCN and the FCJ, those can be licensed a la carte. So you can just go ahead and buy those licenses and add them to your system card. So once again, make sure Resource Configurator under licensing, you've got the Modbus portfolio. You're going to need that. Okay, the other thing is you can go ahead and go to your IP address /MNT. This is kind of your maintenance page. So you go to that through your web browser, and that's where you can kind of get into the Stardom communication settings in terms of 9600, N81, so some of the things that you might do for your serial port setup. So to get to that, you just go to the IP address in a web browser /MNT, enter your user ID and password. Default user ID is lowercase Stardom. The password is all uppercase Yokogawa. So once you've logged in, go to your maintenance menu. If you're not already in maintenance mode, you might want to reboot into maintenance mode. So you'd click that, go ahead and reboot into maintenance mode. And then once you've rebooted, you're going to come back in here. You're going to go to Edit. You're going to go down to this guy here if you're hooking up through that port. And then if you're in maintenance mode, it'll actually give you the option to edit this guy. And then you can edit it if you need to. In this case, the default settings of 9600 N81 were already there, so I didn't need to edit it. But just be aware, if you do need to edit your COM port settings for the Stardom unit, you got to come in through the maintenance webpage to do that. Okay, so let's kind of minimize some of these. And the other thing that you might need is the Logic Designer library for Modbus. So on your first CD, which is part number NT203, that's where you get Logic Designer and Resource Configurator. You got to, of course, make sure you've installed Logic Designer. The second CD, which is part NT205 AJ, this is your application portfolio disk. And on that, you're going to have Logic Designer libraries, and you're going to have to make sure that you install the Modbus communication portfolio. This will have all your Modbus communication libraries. Also of interest here is going to be samples. If you click on samples, go to example 11, you're going to see two here. The first is the Modbus Ethernet project, and the second is the Modbus serial project. Might be a good idea just to kind of look at those to get an idea about how Modbus serial communications is done. I kind of used that as the start of my project. So just wanted you to know that make sure you install the Modbus communication portfolio from the application portfolio disk. And then you've got these sample projects here that are a good place to take a look. So I've gone ahead, opened up Logic Designer here. And I've made a brief project here. So you're probably going to want to go up here and go New Project. And then you're going to kind of pick the Stardom NPass as your default project. Other than that, you're going to make sure you go down to Target Setting here. Make sure you have the IP address of your Stardom unit. Once you have that, you're going to want to go ahead and create or make sure in your libraries you've gone ahead and added Modbus to your library. And then you're going to go ahead and create a new program unit. And so I've gone ahead and created one here. I called it RTU Master. You can name yours whatever you want. And then there's going to be some critical function blocks you need to add in here. Okay, so once you have your kind of function block up over here, let's go down here. This guy right here is one of the groups that you're going to need to take a look at here. And you can see how there's some that say A. That's for Modbus ASCII mode. And then you're going to see some that say B here. And that's for kind of the binary mode, which is kind of more typical for Modbus RTU connections. So there's two kind of critical function blocks that we need to do what we're going to do here. So the first is the one that opens up the master connection here, which is this guy here. So there's the slave, and then there's the master open up. So we want it to open up a master connection to make it connect. Okay. The other thing is I've just gone ahead and I filled in some of the variables here. So I just said, hey, make sure that this is turned on. So I just did a true here. You could, of course, programmatically turn this on and off if you desire. But I just hard-coded it to say, hey, always have this serial connection open. You had to say what COM port. So let's just kind of take a look at these. So I just called this guy true. For this guy here, I just typed in COM4 for the port. Some of these guys you can kind of set out whatever timeouts you wanted. This option 1 is pretty much always going to be this value down here. And then you can just kind of give some variables names here for like error codes and so on. But the critical one here is this channel, because we're going to use this to pass down. So you just kind of create them all the native types for this particular function block. And then I just added another one here. So open valid, that's just a true binary variable type. I did this little SDCutil. Essentially all this is a timer basically saying, hey, in this case every second, go ahead and trigger the read. So it's basically passing the trigger on the read over here to this particular block. So once again, you're going to go over here and you're going to pull over this guy here, which is the word read. So I think it's something right down there, this guy right here. So you just drag that guy over, drop it in here. You're going to put in the same variable that you opened up here. Option you can leave blank. Station number, this is an important one. Let's kind of take a look at this. This is the Modbus RTU address of the EJX. So in this case, I've set it to 2. By default, it's going to come out of the box as 1. Well, guess what? Stardom, the master, is already 1. So you're going to have to make sure that your EJX is sent over to a different address. So make sure that your EJX is configured so that it has an address other than 1, because the Stardom master is already going to be 1. So in this case, I went into FieldMate, but you could also use something like the Kepware OPC server, and I'll show you how I connect up with those to make sure that the unit number of the EJX is set to something other than 1. So in this case, I have it set to 2. Okay, so station number 1, that's just the name of a variable, and I've got that set to the Modbus RTU unit number of 2, which is kind of what the EJX is also programmed to. And then in terms of these, the other important one here is this element number 3. So in this case, this guy here, this is kind of the start of my variables that I'm interested in, which is 300-401, which is the start of the, I think it's differential pressure, and you can once again get that out of the EJX Modbus register portion. Okay, and we're going to do what's called a block read, where we're going to read in kind of multiple words of data that happen to correspond to the primary 3 variables. So the primary 3 variables start at this guy here. And then element size here, I set it to 6. I want to read in 6 words worth of data. And that's going to correspond to the 3 floating point registers that I hope to bring in. So it takes 2 words to make up a floating point. So by 6, I'm getting the 3 floating points. So 3 floating points times 2 words apiece equals 6. So there we go. So those are 2 critical ones here. The rest here, these are just kind of status reporting variables. They can be anything you want in terms of their name. The other is this position 3. In terms of the Modbus RTU, it's always going to have pretty much the exact same value, so you don't really need to give it other than a name, anything other than a name. The word data, I just called it EJX words. This is where all your retrieved data from the EJX is going to be stored. It's essentially an array of 125 words. Then the next important thing here is we're going to have to do a little bit of conversion. So what we're doing is we're taking the words that we've retrieved from the EJX and we're converting them into floating point values. So right here, I essentially use the word to real right there to go ahead and convert them in. And it's important here that we have the right order. So you can kind of see the order I have here is I'm doing the second word first. So EJX words array value 2, EJX words array value 1. It's combining those 2 words in this order, and you can kind of see how they're reversed into the real here. And I just gave this a name of EJX DP, and then the next SP for the static pressure, and the third temperature. So let's go ahead. Once you've got all that done, you're just going to go ahead and do a make. And then you're going to go ahead and download that to your RTU. So I've gone ahead and downloaded that to our RTU. And then I'm just going to go into debug mode here so you can actually see some data in real time. So up here you can kind of see everything's kind of looking good. So what you want to see is kind of an open valid of 1, which means you've gone ahead. You're hoping to see your error and your status looking good at 0. Your channel is 4, so that looks good as well. And then you're just going to see this guy trigger periodically. You're kind of seeing it getting triggered every second pretty much. And then same thing you want to see for these. You want to see the starting register, 300-401, which corresponds to the start of the kind of 3 primary variables you're looking at. 6 words that I'm being read in. You're pretty much going to want to see all these line up pretty much as 0. So you're going to see this periodically trickle to 1, which means it had a valid connection every second. But you want to make sure that your error and your status are showing up pretty much 0. If they're not, you can always go to the Modbus Communications Help and go ahead and take a look and do a little bit of debugging on your codes. Like for example, when I first started, I was getting like a code here, something like 8004, which happened to correspond to wrong RTU address. And that was because my EJX was set to a address of 1, and my Stardom unit was also 1. So we had a bit of a conflict there. So then I went into FieldMate and went ahead and changed my address to 2, and then everything started to work. You can see it's position 00-00-04. That's pretty much standard. EJX words, I've gone ahead and essentially dragged that down into my watch window down here. So I can go ahead and see, here's my first 6 array values that are kind of being populated in a real-time basis. And then if I drag down a little bit more here, you can say, here's my words coming in. And then here's my derived values. So right now my EJX isn't really hooked up to a process. So what we're seeing is we're just kind of seeing floating values here. So we're not really seeing much of a change in my differential pressure because of course we're not flowing. You're going to see the static pressure. Maybe it's going to change just a little bit every now and then. You're definitely seeing some little bit of movement on the word side, but it's just not enough to cause much of a change on the differential pressure or the static pressure real value. And then down here, I've just got my EJX set to essentially a static value. I don't have the RTD hooked up to it, so I'm not getting kind of a real-time measurement. So I've just set it to a fixed value of 70. So here it is. We're bringing in everything right into the Stardom unit via RS485, bringing in the primary 3. So just to wrap up, you got to make sure you use this block here to open up the serial port connection. You got to make sure you use this block here to go ahead and read in those primary 3. Now, of course, there's more than just these 3 registers that you could be reading in or writing to on the EJX. So just make sure you're making good use. I'll just switch out of debug mode of the various Modbus reads and writes that you need. And once again, remember, you're going to be looking at the binary mode ones here. And there's going to be various different ones you can use based on the register type that you're trying to read in or write to. And then some of these are going to be reads, and then some of them are going to be writes. So just make sure you're kind of using the right one. So I'll add on to the end of this video with a little bit of FieldMate talking to the EJX, so you can kind of see how you can do a little bit of setup with the EJX, as well as Kepware talking to the EJX. So for the logic designer and the Stardom portion of it, I'm going to wrap up here. So let's continue on with the FieldMate portion of the EJX setup. So this is one of the ways that we have for easily configuring the EJX 910 Modbus. So what you'll need is a copy of FieldMate, and you'll also need the EJX 910 Modbus DTM. And what you're going to want to do once you have all that is you're going to want to go to your user-defined connections. So if we go to Segment Viewer, User-Defined Connections, you're going to want to go ahead and do a new FDD project. It'll bring up this guy here. You're going to go ahead and do an add under your topology here. Modbus over serial line. Product vendor, Yokogawa, Modbus serial DTM. then you're going to go ahead and do a right click on that guy. You're going to go ahead, do an add, the 910 Modbus, and you can kind of see how we've gone ahead and created the pathway here. And then underneath this guy here, if I just kind of double clicked on it, you could go ahead and put in the address. So the default on these guys is 1, so if you're just getting one from the factory that hasn't been played around with, you're probably going to want to go this path. And that'll help you establish your connection, and then you can go up here and go ahead and do a connect on it. The other thing is you're going to have to make sure in the background that you've got something like a USB to RS485 adapter here. In this case, I'm using a B&B Electronics model number USOPTL4. It's a 422 to 485 adapter, and I've just got it hooked up via a 2-wire connection. I've gone ahead and I've jumpered the TDA and RDA on the adapter, and the TDB and the RDB, I have those jumpered together. So essentially the 2 A's are jumpered, the 2 B's are jumpered, and then essentially I just run the A line over to the A line on the EJX, and I run the B line over to the B connector on the EJX, and that's kind of how simple the connection is. Once I have all that, I have this guy here, I just go bam up there and I can connect to it. Now I've actually already done that, so I've got this guy here, so I can go ahead, open FTD project, got this guy, just going to double click on it. You can see it already has an address of 2 on it, so if you had multiple of these daisy chain, they'd each have an RTU address up front here. Go ahead and hit a connect here. Just be aware that this is a Modbus master, and there can only be 1 master at a time, which means you're not going to be able to kind of have multiple units hooked up, multiple masters, which means you can't have Kepware, you can't have Stardom, you can't have any other master device hooked up to your EJX and pulling it at the same time. So I just kind of double clicked on this guy here, online parameters, and then this is where you can kind of go in and do any types of changes you might need to your EJX. Now the only thing I've really played around with on this one is I went to communication setup and I changed the slave address to 2, and then I did a download to device, and then once I've done that download to device, I just cycled power on the EJX to make sure it came up with the new address, and then once I did, I changed the address from its original 1 to a 2 up here, and then I was able to come back into it. Let's see, the other things that I may have kind of tried on some of this, and you can see all the values in here. You can there see that my temperature is set at a 70. You can do some diagnostics, test, calibration type. Status, you can see that my temperature is in a fixed mode. Process variables, you can go down here once again, see that. Device variables and status. So essentially all your items are in here. So this is just probably the best single way to configure your EJX Modbus. Okay, so this is FieldMate with the EJX Modbus, how to configure it, how to get into the unit, how to change the device address to something other than the 1 that it starts with, the Modbus RTU address. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down quickly here. Go ahead, exit FieldMate. And I'm also going to kind of show you Kepware OPC server. This is, if you don't happen to have FieldMate, this is another kind of down and dirty way that you could get right into the EJX. So once again, you need that RS485 adapter. So I have it installed. It's hooked up to COM3. And I downloaded KepServer EX. It'll run in demo mode for a couple hours. And then you can go ahead And essentially at this level, you go new channel, you pick new channel, whatever name you want, just Modbus RTU serial. You put it to the COM port that you got your 485 adapter attached to. I believe it's N81 is kind of what we were set up at. So if I go up here, just I'm doing a right click on it. I go properties. You can see COM3 9600, 8 data bits, no parity, 1 stop bit. And that's pretty much the only thing I had to do at that level. And then kind of once you do, you go new device once you've created the channel. And let's take a look at the new device I created. So I just gave it a name, device 1. You can name it whatever you want, model, Modbus. There's the address, number 2. So that's the one I'm kind of talking to, the RTU address, number 2. And then the other important thing is kind of these, let me see here, settings. So make sure that your settings are like this, because this is going to make sure that your byte order and all that is correct. So just use default Modbus byte order, leave all these guys unchecked, have these guys checked the same way. So you want to make sure you have the correct address here. And then under settings, you want to make sure you have these. Now once you have that done, you can go over here, go new tag. So I've created some here. So here's the differential pressure, the static pressure, and the temperature. You can kind of see they're at the same addresses we did in Logic Designer. What you're going to see that's a little different on these is the data types. We don't have to do any type of conversion. Kepware's taking care of that. So I just said data type float, started at that address. It's going to be smart enough to pull in the 2 words. And on that settings tab that we looked at prior, that's going to make sure the words are converted in the right order. So I've done that. So certainly you can go in here and you can put in some of these for the ones that can be written to. You can go ahead and write to them. So you could go ahead and just kind of do a little guerrilla setup here on your EJX without FieldMate by going in here and setting up all the particular registers that you want to read and write to, and then go ahead and configure it kind of manually using this mode. And then we just go Tools, Launch OPC, Client, Device 1, and you can see here they are. So there's that temperature of 70. If I wanted to write to one, here's one that I can actually write to that I set up. So I could do an asynchronous or synchronous write. I don't know, something like 75 for my fixed temperature. Hit apply. You can now see that my fixed temperature up there also changed to 75. Here's my differential pressure and my static pressure coming in, and you can see they're close to 0. So that's just a quick way of doing the Modbus EJX setup through Kepware OPC Quick Client as well. So you've got 2 choices, FieldMate, which is of course the preferred and easy way to do it. But if you're in a pinch, you can also use Kep Server and then just manually enter in your registers and manipulate the ones you have to through the Quick Client here by once again right-clicking and then doing a write to the ones that you can write to. And then the ones that you can write to, those are going to be denoted in the EJX Modbus Communications Manual. So this is Andrew Brody with Yokogawa. Hope this has been useful for you. Take care and have a great day.